Hello dot hackers. Today I want to talk about the anniversary of dothack Fragment that was released back on November 22nd, 2005 and went on to live to January 2007. This game was originally intended to have a one-year service from 2005 to 2006, but the popularity proved only in Japan that the game lasted for a few more months. Those of you who might not know, dothack Fragment uses the same assets as dothack Infection, Mutation, Outbreak, and Quarantine, with the exception of the full motion videos and the voice acting from the voice actors for every character, with the exception of the grunty foods such as grunt mints, golden egg, and so forth. So dothack Fragment was released on November 22nd retail, but a few weeks earlier, you could have gotten this game, dothack Fragment, the early release version. Now this version, unlike the retail version, does not have the offline mode. It only has the online mode. And your online mode is very limited. It does not have all the character assets that the full retail version has. Now, if you don't have the case, you can also identify the games with their distinct discs. The early release version had the purple disc, and the retail version had the green disc. So let's go back to September of 2005, when dothack Fragment was announced. They had a competition, or a lottery, where people could enroll and be shipped for free, as far as I know, this early release version of dothack Fragment. There were terms and conditions. It was only available in Japan. But as you see right here, on this disclosure, they do mention the advanced service period will start when the release version product arrives. Advanced service may end without notice, and this is true. This early release version here lets you play the online mode only, and there was an early release version of the AreaServer program that you had to download and install on your Windows PC, which allowed you to host an area server where up to 3 people can join on one area server and go on a dungeon run. All this was supported on their official website for dothack Fragment. And every week they had a maintenance on Tuesday from 10 to 1600 hours. And with this information, we learned who was actually hosting the lobby server program. The lobby server is basically the main hub when you go to the online mode after you've configured all your network settings on your game. And then from here, you're dispatched to individual area servers that people are hosting from their own PCs. So you would go onto it, you would connect to an area server, and 2 more people would join your area server to have a party of 3 automatically, and then you can go and leave the root town and go to the fields and dungeons. But that's not all. There was more to it than just that. So let's look on the official website and see what we can find. So the area server program was officially released on October 21st, 2005. This was prior to the public release for the retail version. This is the area server for the pre-release version. It was available on the 27th of October 2005. And it began on that same day that it was referring to. And then when November 22nd came around, the goal was to have the retail players log on as well. And so some changes had to be made. For example, the area server program needed the retail version, and so area server version 1.0.0 was released. The owners of the early release area server would be discontinued, and those who had the early release dothack Fragment disk would also be discontinued at a later date. And this would be in December 2005. So the service officially started on November 22nd. And then, as I mentioned, the expiration of the early release area server was set to retire. The announcement came on November 28th, that you had until December 6, 2005 to continue using your area server early release version and needed to upgrade it to the 1.0 version. And then, of course, with a release of a program, there were some bug fixes and changes made. And so Area Server 1.0.1 was announced on December 2nd. On December 5th, the Area Server early release version was discontinued. Also, a new version of the Area Server program, version 1.0.2, was also released. On December 27th, those who had the early release version of dothack Fragment would no longer be allowed to connect online. And since there was no offline version, those disks pretty much became obsolete. Also, the New Year's event was announced on December 27th. On December 28th, the New Year's Day event was also announced, allowing players to join on this unique event. And then the area server, which would be the final version, 1.0.3, was distributed on December 28th. However, there was a bug in between 1.0.2 and 1.0.3, which I personally believe is affecting people who are playing dothack Fragment today, where the dates are off. Now, originally, the area server was intended to have these special events that would unlock on certain days. At the moment, if anyone tries to host an area server, the dates will not land on the date it was intended for. For example, when you host a new server, the New Year's event will pop up within a few minutes. Whether it's July, August, September, when you host a new area server, the New Year's event will pop up when this is supposed to be exclusively on January 1st. On January 17th, 2006, we had the Zackmon event announced that was going to be for February 3rd. And on January 17th, the 1.0.2 version was discontinued. Any connections of the area server to the lobby server were blacklisted. You could not log your area server 1.0.2 onto the lobby server, and no one could connect to it, making the version obsolete. It was announced on February 10th that a Valentine's Day event would be held on February 13th. On March 13th, the Cherry Blossom event was announced. That would be hosted on March 15th. On October 2nd, Sports Day event was announced, which would be held on October 9th. And 1 year from the launch of the retail version of dothack Fragment on November 22nd, dothack Fragment announced it would be shutting down soon. It would be 2 more months on January 18, 2007 for those who wanted to continue playing, but that would be the hard date that the lobby server would be shut down. And without the lobby server, anyone hosting an area server would not be able to have anyone connect to it, making the online version of dothack Fragment obsolete. But those who still have the disk could still enjoy the online version. I'm sorry, the offline version. And as of January 18th, when you try to go onto the webpage, this is what you got, saying thank you, and we have concluded our online service for dothack Fragment. And as I mentioned before in the maintenance portion, they did mention Bandai was the one hosting this, not CyberConnect 2. So what happens after that? Well, 1 year later, a person by Robert Coldbird had decided to try to reverse engineer everything on dothack Fragment, both the online version, but also translating the game into English if possible, since the retail version of dothack Fragment is entirely in Japanese. menus, items, everything is in Japanese in this game. So Coldbird decided to put together a team and began looking at the working innards of dothack Fragment. So it was announced on his website, theworld.superprevs, which stands for private server, was launched. But in order to start this, he needed dothack Fragment, the retail copy. And so thanks to a donation from AWeb, Robert Coldbird received the dothack Fragment disk. So you can begin scanning everything and begin looking into the game's content. He created tool sets that would analyze the data.bin files and the .cmp files on March 2nd, 2008. March 3rd, he started looking at the PRG dialog files. On March 16th, he created the first patch for dothack Fragment. But for his process, he was using a real Ps2 and not an emulator, and so he was burning disks in order to make sure any testing was functional on the game. Working on a fat PS2 seemed more troublesome, so he started looking into needing a PS2 Slim. PS2 Slim had some unique options with DVD RWs, which was exploitable later on with free DVD boot, and only available on PS2 Slim models. A second patch was released on April 6, 2008, called the Port Over patch. Basically, the idea was, since the original games, Infection, Mutation, Outbreak, and Quarantine, were similar to dothack Fragment, why not pull over the information from Quarantine and put it into Fragment? And of course, there were some bug fixes revolving around that, so a revision 2.2 was released on April 9, 2008. Beyond the translation and reverse engineering of the lobby server, Coldbird also wanted to work with and modify with the game assets. He was calling for artists and engineers alike to join his team on April 18, 2008. On April 26, 2008, revision 3 was released. And he created a downloads page for different files for the patches, for copies of the manual, and other things. And this was also updated as well. On June 13, 2008, Coldbird decided to move his Fragment progress, which was on a website called ServerExplorerWV. I cannot speak French, so I apologize if I just butchered that. But he moved it over to Sealy's Network. Sealy's Network was working on other games, and he decided to join the production of those games as well, and have Fragment be part of that as well. Games such as Ragnarok Online, and a few other games. Over on their message board, he talked about what we do on March 18, 2008, going over what the purpose was for the dothack Fragment revival team that they decided to form. As well as looking for translators, trying to help out and find people who spoke English fluently in Japanese and able to make the translations seem more accurate. And he created some tools. the Fragment tool sources, and explanation on how to use them. But they also needed donations in order to get a slimline PS2 as well as the product Swap Magic, which was an attempt to allow frägment boot and other things become usable. Over on the Sealy's Network website that the project had moved over towards, it went over the quarantine port over about the monster, item, and equipment databases. And discuss more on about translations, that they needed more translators, and if anyone was interested in translating, he put up the hack_01.elf file up online as a text file, which basically showed all the in-game Japanese text. You could take this file, look through it, and make your changes as needed, and provided it back to Robert Coldbird. Shortly after that, however, the revision 3 patch had gone on hiatus. He mentioned that never got the donations he needed in order to start working on it, but the love was still there and he still wanted to continue. But the moment between working with the other projects on Sealy's Network, the dothack fragment translation was just going to be put on hold for a while. After a while, everything on Sealy's Network was removed and rebuilt over on coldbird.net/fragment. This is going to be a new site focused strictly on the fragment translation project, not to be interrupted with all the other games that they were working on at the time. They did have grown more involved with the Sony PSP community, but they wanted to make sure Fragment was separated from that type of community, because when you went to that website on Sealy's Network, it was bogged down with discussions of everything else on the homepage, and Fragment was just a footnote. So, I agree, this new move was great. I like the changes that they made it more easier to spot, follow, and also contribute. So, Robert Coldbird had a new team, himself as the main programmer, reverse engineer, and cracker, but he also brought his friend Ice, a high-level programmer and translator, to work alongside him. Over time, that team had grown, Coldbird being the programmer engineer, but also brought along Aramaki as another programmer reverse engineer, and NCDyson as a programmer and reverse engineer, and Ice as the translator. Eventually, Ice would be removed from the team, and the team grew to KantProp as a translator and Kitsune as a translator. So on the new site, December 24th, 2013, they had discussed that the DNAS had been cracked. What this was a login service. When you tried to log onto a PS2 network game, it would have to go through this service first before it went to the directed address. So they found a way to bypass that, so they can begin working on their lobby server reverse engineering. On January 3rd, 2014, they were showing more progress, but more importantly, they had a working lobby emulator. Once again, when you log on to the online mode of dothack fragment, it first goes to a lobby emulator. And then from there, it looks at anyone who's hosting an area server. You can choose whatever area server you wish to log on to, but in order to get that far, you still have to go through the lobby emulator, which is the central point where all players and all area servers are connecting to. So this was made available on github.com on his Mr. Coldbird account. If you head on over there at the time, you would have seen lobby EMU. It's thanks to this that we still have dothack fragment today, because the progress that Coldbird and his team have produced and put available as an open source repository on GitHub, thanks to the swift work of Alkalime, and putting that right back up when the lobby server hosted by Coldbird was shut down. We still have dothack Fragment today. So going back to the updates, on January 12th, 2014, they had completed the data.bin packer and unpacker, as well as a CCS texture dumper and reinjector tools. On March 8, 2014, they got some more progress on the lobby server. On May 29, 2014, they have a working lobby server with working area server listings, which means working online multiplayer. So all the efforts of the programmers on Team Coldbird and the lobby EMU that was hosted on GitHub, people could now join together and play together, thanks to the contributions of NCDyson and others on the team. So now that everything was working in order, still needed some translations and some fine-tune some of the game stability, as well as the lobby server options such as guilds, BBS, mailer, and so forth. There still had much more to go, but they wanted people to play, so they made available the game client, also known as Build 5, on July 20th, 2014, and the area server that they've created on June 2nd, 2014, known as Build 1. They also made available a PCSX2 emulator for those who are playing on PC. It came with all the necessary plugins you needed to play the game, and with the configuration set. And they also had a Ps2 USB Flashstick Bundle that if you had free McBoot, you could pop this into your USB port on a PS2 and begin to play the game on that as well. By June 2nd, 2014, open beta had begun, as well as tutorials on how to connect. On June 3rd, 2014, they fixed a network profile bug. On June 4th, 2014, they mentioned about the PS2 USB Flashstick Bundle option, so those who want to play on a real PS2. They also began to work on the troubles they had with the wireless LAN connections for PCSX2. On July 1st, 2014, Kitsune and KantProp had created Build 3 for the Fragment client for translations. On July 5th, 2014, a new client was available with more translations and bug fixes. On July 20th, 2014, they removed the lockout penalty that was part of the default game, where your items would be wiped. This is a feature in the base retail game that was working intended, but because it became very frustrating for many people playing, they decided to remove this penalty on their Build 5 update. On July 30th, 2014, they updated the lobby server and the area servers to newer versions. So you had to make sure you downloaded the latest area server, and anyone using the old area servers were blocked. On August 1st, 2014, another update for the area server was released. On October 20th, 2014, some more updates and fixes were made for the network. On May 6, 2015, NCDyson reverse engineered on the lobby server main packets, as well as the lobby server chat, and player listing support for the lobby server emulator. September 30th, 2015, more translation news. November 22nd, 2015, Coldbird had updated the PCSX2 Linux network plugin. And by May 30th, 2014, they decided to make a Facebook page to help build more engagement, find more players. And so they looked to Facebook to do this. So they had a Facebook page where they copied over their updates that were on Coldbird.net over to the Facebook page. And the last website update regarding the Linux network profile update was the last one on their homepage. Everything from this point on will be on the Facebook page for Fragment. So to reiterate, some of the things that they did on their website was also ported over to Facebook. They talked about the lobby emulator working. They showed off videos of Coldbird, NCDyson, and other random players joining the area servers. And they decided to get feedback from the community on how translations would go on spells that were not in the original dothack games. Unlike dothack Infection, Mutation, Outbreak, and Quarantine, there was a feature called Awakenings. Awakenings is a skill that 3 players on an area server need to have the same items that had the same awakenings, where they could do a spell together. Again, this was not a feature in the base games, but was available in dothack Fragment. And so they needed to figure out what would be a good English translation for these. Once again, they're just porting over their discussions from their website over to Facebook, going over the network plugin updates. And they decided to create a server status page over on Coldbird.net, which basically showed what area servers were online as well as who was playing. On July 5th, 2014, they welcomed Kitsune to the dothack revival team for translations and would be lead translator of the team. On July 30th, 2014, they began release of a new area server, 1.0.4, which would help with cheaters who were trolling the community. Area server 1.0.5 was released on July 31st, 2014. Over on the client side, for people playing dothack Fragment, build number 6 was released on October 20th, 2014. For February 4th, 2015, ported some more content from Quarantine over to Fragment. On March 29th, 2015, they discussed about the translations of item names, monster names, and database-related things in general, as well as the localization works. On July 19th, 2015, they went on to discuss about a new PCSX2 bundle for Windows and Linux, about helping people with that, as well as the network issues with the Dev9 plugins, and some GSDX, which is a video plugin to help make it work on the network setup wizard. On September 21st, 2015, they showed off a data bug in corrupted areas. Corrupted areas are like the corruption you see in dothack, Mutation, Outbreak, and Quarantine, where the fields have broken looking textures on the floor and in the sky. On September 30th, 2015, they announced the updates on the Fragment webpage. On October 31st, 2015, they talked about some dedicated area servers. On May 4th, 2016, they mentioned that the team behind Fragment revivals such as NCDyson, Kitsune, Belldandu, and Coldbird were taking some time off, but as well as when they could, working on some updates and showing off some of the updates that was in progress. Now, this was a turning point that some people had mixed feelings about. Some people loved it, some people hated it. On May 23rd, 2016, they decided on Build 8 that they were going to make it a dothack GU themed interface. The goal of this was to basically less clutter the user interface while playing the game. When you play the dothack games, the original PS2 ones, the bottom portion of the screen is heavily covered with the portraits, the HP, and the SP bars for every character. And so with dothack GU out in 2006, they made it thinner, more slimmer, and more tucked away into the bottom left corner. And they tried to move the interface in that direction. And like I said, some people liked it, some people hated it. And on May 23rd, 2016, they showed off what that meant. As you can see in the picture down below here, everything is just tucked away on the bottom left. And they also updated the wallpapers that were in the game. And they also updated the character class images and much more. Pretty much the game got a dark interface from its original light blue interface. On June 19, 2016, a new area server was available for download, version 3.1.3. And unfortunately, over on December 8, 2016, Robert Coldbird had decided to end production on the Fragment revival team. Basically, they thank everyone for all their support, but the friction within the community caused by the trolls, the cheaters, and other unscrutable individuals, they decided they were just done and enough. They didn't like it, they didn't like the abuse, and so they shut everything down. There was more to it than that, and there were some things going on behind the scenes, but unfortunately, what this meant to the public, without the lobby server being hosted and without translations continuing, Fragment was pretty much at an end. But before they deleted the GitHub repository for the lobby emulator, the lobby EMU was still available on individuals' repositories. And so Alkalime decided to begin hosting dothack Fragment, the lobby server. Not much was changed. It still was pretty much the same, but you could still continue to play the game. But without a team, the progress that Coldbird had done was about as far as it was going to get. So we only had Build 8 between 2006 and up until 2020 when things really started cooking. But more on that later. So over on fragment.dothackers.org, there was some notice and some links to downloads in order to get started. The lobby server was hosted. All you needed was the game and a little patcher that converted the in-game URL that was trying to connect to the Coldbird server onto the new Alkalime server. Eventually, this page was much more streamlined, easier to read for PC users, for PS2 users, and those who wanted to host their own area servers were given easier to read links. Eventually, this page was given a facelift as the community continued to grow. The need for more organization was created. So the pages were broken up between downloads, status pages, and a new Hashkick records, which basically kept a log of all characters who logged onto the lobby server, so you can see what their character names were, SP, HP, and so forth. Oh, and their levels. As time moved on, we community began to do some more updates, posting links to the emulator, telling people how to download their BIOS files, getting the network plugin for PC users, the CLR Dev9 from GitHub. Back then, because of the visual glitch with the in-game network config, it was recommended to use the network adapter startup disk, but that has been since fixed, as well as the launcher for Fragment and a few add-ons such as the CLR USB, which allow people to use the keyboards on PC to type in the game, as well as the AreaServer download. In 2020, we had a great breakthrough thanks to Tellium in creating the Tellipatcher. It used the Google Documents, so it was a live document that the translators who are working on the game could go to the Google Docs, update the link, the Japanese to English, and the Tellium patcher created by Vector would take this Google Documents and put it into the game, which made it a lot faster and easier to translate, make fixes, and also help the community find the text that need to be done and to help contribute. So Vector on September 30th, 2020, created this little guide on how to use the patcher. The patcher would be using xdelta, .NET, and ImageBurn. So you needed ImageBurn and you needed the latest.NET. The xdelta patcher would go to the Google Docs and do all the updates, but this was only available for Windows 10 users. People using Windows 7 or Linux or Mac, unfortunately, could not use this method unless you were running a emulator for a Windows PC. Eventually, this was made available for Windows 7 and Linux users. And thanks to Dash and Emus, we also had the dothack quarantine Grunty Foods voices were able to be ported over to dothack Fragment. So rather than hearing the Japanese names for grunt mints, you could hear it in English. As of now, dothack Fragment has one central community. There were a few other Facebook and Reddit communities that are long gone now. The Coldbird Facebook community is the only one that's left in terms of the team Coldbird. All their web pages are been since deleted. Their Discord has been removed. They were originally hosting it on their Prometheus Discord, but the Fragment section is gone. So right now your options really are just using the Netslums Discord or using the dothack Network Discord and web pages and communities and all the guides that everyone has provided. There are a few other tools and updates and features you could use, and also many different videos you can watch and live streams, and we encourage you all to give dothack Fragment a try. All you have to do is check one of the guides or watch one of the videos on how to do it, and you can start playing the game too as well. But Fragment has been a long project by many people since 2005, and today still, there's still progress being done every day, and we hope that you enjoy that what everyone has done. So for now, I'd like to take back and look at all the people who have contributed to dothack Fragment, its production, its translation, localization, whatever you want to call it. And here we are. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Again, be sure to try out dothack fragments. Be sure to check out our guides, our videos, and we hope to help you enjoy the game and hope to see more updates. Thank you for watching.